Hey friends, welcome to Keys Decor, where we talk all things home, buying, decorating, and just making your space feel like a sanctuary. I'm your host, latoya.cooper. I'm a realtor here in the Triangle. I'm also a former marketing professional and a former yoga teacher. And my goal is to help you navigate your journey from house to home. All right, so today the conversation is all about buying versus renting. It's such a huge decision, and it's one of the biggest decisions that every homeowner makes before making that decision to take the leap. Now, home ownership truthfully isn't for everyone. I feel like we're taught that it's kind of the American dream, but it's not always for everyone. Um, my mom, she bought a home when I was very young. I don't remember how old I was exactly, but I know I was in elementary school when she bought our home. And it was such a huge moment. As a kid, I didn't recognize the magnitude of such an accomplishment, especially for a single black woman back then. But I knew that it felt good. And it's actually the first time that I felt like I want to be, I want to cause other families to feel this type of happiness. It really informed my life and kind of guided me on my path to real estate. But I'll get into my whole story details another time. But it was such a huge thing, and she'd always kind of taught us that the importance of home ownership. So fast forward about I believe it was maybe 2010 or 2010 actually. She decided to move to the Triangle, and when she moved to the Triangle, she began renting, which made sense because you're in a new area, right? You want to kind of get to know the area, before you make a huge decision like that and invest so much money, into your future. So then once I got into real estate and became a realtor, I started kind of questioning, of course, you know, Mom, let me know when you're ready. I hope you find that home. And then she informed me that she probably would never own a home again. And that to me was just so confusing because, like I said, she had always instilled in us the importance of home ownership. But when she broke it down to me, to her, the biggest thing was not having to worry about the maintenance or repairs. And yeah, I do remember as a single mother, that was probably a lot. That was a lot. I remember it being a lot. I remember her sometimes, having to call on people and them being undependable. And yeah, it was a lot. And so, not to mention the financial side. So she liked being able to rent and not having to worry about fixing anything, being able to call someone else. So for that point in her life, renting made more sense to her and felt better to her. So I just say that to say that, renting isn't always for everyone. We all have different reasons. We all have different things that are more important. So let's kind of dig into it. If you've been questioning and trying to figure it out, I got you. Okay, so we're going to look at the pros and cons of both renting and buying. And the goal is to help you make a decision that aligns best with your lifestyle and goals. All right, so let's get into it. And we're going to start with the benefits of renting. All right, now we're going to discuss financial considerations and lifestyle considerations of both. So for renting, of course, you can rent with very little or low upfront costs compared to buying. Because most of the time when you're renting, you only need your first month rent and deposit, and that's it. Okay, so really easy, low cost compared to buying a home, all right, where you have to, consider larger sums of money, but we'll get into that. Of course, like I was just explaining with my mom, you have fewer maintenance responsibilities. The landlord upkeeps the property. If something breaks or something stops working, you can just give them a call and they'll fix it. A lot of times they'll even take care of lawn maintenance, depending on where you live. There are some rentals where you have to take care of your own lawn maintenance. Okay, but for the most part, you do have fewer responsibilities when it comes to upkeep and responsibilities, maintenance responsibilities, all right? There's also the flexibility that comes with renting. If you're someone who likes to move a lot, or if you're just not sure where you want to be, it's easier to get up and move when you're renting because, of course, you have your lease, but most leases now, you can break those leases. There's fees involved, of course, but but there's still the possibility, and you have the option. You have the option to break the lease and to easily move around as you see fit. Okay, so maybe your family situation changes. You get married and you're in a 1-bedroom apartment, but you need a bigger space now. So it's easier to just break that lease or wait until your lease ends and then move somewhere else rather than having to go through the process of selling, okay? Now, with renting, you also have the opportunity to save while you're trying to figure out your long-term goals. Maybe you're not sure, especially, when you're younger, you have the whole world ahead of you. Maybe you're not necessarily ready to settle in a space, or you're not really sure if the career that you started in is going to be it, so you have that option to just save, and maybe you just need to save. You have the option to save, while you're trying to figure out your long-term goals. All right. Another great thing when it comes to rentals is that you have access to amenities, pools, workout facilities, things like that. Some rental communities also have different activities or different get-togethers that you can do. I know I was once when we first moved to Cary, the apartment complex we lived in, every Monday they had Panera Bread. Different things in there, different treats and different breads in there that we can go and get on Mondays. And then during the summer, they would throw a cookout by the pool. Now, some communities, it doesn't have to be a rental community. There are a lot of communities now that offer, that have pools and that have amenities. Some have tennis courts, even around, homes where they're homeowners outside of rental communities. But I have found in general that if there are anything like there's extra little things, they kind of do those at the apartment or in the rental communities, I would say. So it's just something to keep in mind. Also with with renting, it's better it's easier to make a budget and to stick to a budget because you don't have to, your costs are more controlled. You don't have to budget extra for the water heater that seems to be struggling and you're going to have to replace soon. You're more, you can kind of simplify your budget more when you're renting, because when certain things are going to occur, such as rent increases, you usually have a heads up, so you can kind of factor those things in long before they happen, and that's the way it's going to be for the next at least 12 months usually. All right, so let's talk about the drawbacks to renting, because it's not all peaches and cream, of course. Now, with renting, you don't really have many customization options. You're limited in what you can do as far as renovations and things like that. Even when it comes to like hanging pictures, being mindful of not to use nails because it can cause damage or holes in the walls that could affect your deposit at the end when you move out. So, you have to think kind of outside of that. Maybe use command strips rather than nails whenever possible. And even things like paint. You have kids, and that was one of the things I was excited about as a kid. But, you can't really paint your room if you don't own it. So, but, there are options such as, wallpaper, removable wallpaper that works great. But you're definitely limited in the type of customizations that you can do to your home when you are renting. Another con, rent increases. Listen, when I before we moved to Cary, we lived in Greenville for about maybe 3 or 4 years, maybe even a little longer, maybe like 5 or 6 years we lived in Greenville. And when we were there, when you signed a lease, you signed it for a year initially, but once that year was up, you didn't sign another lease. You just automatically went month to month, and you never had a rent increase. Like whatever you paid when you signed the lease, that's what you paid until you moved out, even if it was 5 years down the road. And so when I moved here, it was so different because, well, when we moved to Cary, because suddenly year after year we had to sign a new lease, and not to mention the rent went up every year, and I didn't really understand. But that's how it is. There was rent increases. And if you still live in the Pitt County area, let me know. Is it still like that? Like, do you just sign one lease and just pay that forever? Or do they have rent increases now and you have to kind of sign a new lease every year? Let me know what it's like there, if you know. So, but yeah. So every year when you're renting, your costs can rise and you're not building any equity in the home. No equity at all. So that's definitely a downside to renting. There's a lack of stability, because when you're renting, there's always a risk that you would have to move if something happens, if the landlord has to sell. And let me tell you another story. You know, I used to always pride myself on being able to create stable homes for my kids. I was never the type of person to move around a lot. Usually if I was somewhere, I was there for a few years and only left if I was moving to another city. But when we, some years back, we began renting a, matter of fact, when we left our little apartment, we were in our apartment for 11 years. When we left, we rented a 3-story townhouse. Beautiful, large, loved that townhouse, seemed to be perfect. And then a few years later, when we were there, maybe going into our 4th year, the landlords, they were getting a divorce, and a part of their divorce was selling the rental properties. And so we found ourselves in a situation where we had to move, and it was not the greatest time to move. For one, it was around the holidays, and for two, it was just not a great year for us financially. So it was really hard for us to, it just wasn't the ideal time, but we didn't have a choice because they had to sell. And that situation was the situation that showed me that renting does not create stability. I thought that I was creating a stable home environment for my kids so that we weren't moving a lot, and we had a home, but look, there's no stability in your home situation unless you own the home. Truly, no long-term stability. You can have a place to stay, and you can make sure that you pay your rent on time and do the right thing. But if you want true stability, long-term stability, you have to own that home, and so that you don't have to worry about anyone taking it from you, unless you default, of course. But yeah, the renting, it didn't bring the stability that I thought that it would. So lesson learned. All right. So yeah, and not only that, but let's just say your lease terms change. Let's say that your lease, it goes up way beyond what your budget can afford. So then you're in a situation where you have to move. So there's very little control, and there is a lack of stability when you have to rent. All right. Another downside, of course, I mentioned it before, you don't build equity. You're helping the homeowner. They're building equity. They're paying their mortgage, but you don't benefit from that at all. Another drawback to renting is the credit score requirement. And I put this in the drawbacks because one of the things that I noticed a few years ago, and I actually kind of went through Zillow a little bit to look before I did this, is that the credit score requirements for rentals, sometimes they can be kind of high and they can be firm. Okay, because I noticed that some said negotiable, a lot said non-negotiable. Like they want credit scores 700 or high 6s, 680. And so depending on where you are, and you might not have a credit score that high, so it can be a little challenging to get into a rental if they want a 680 credit score no matter what, but you're at 620, but maybe your credit's not even bad. Maybe you're just trying to build your credit. So that's why I put that as a drawback, because versus owning a home, I mean, you can own a home and, have a enroll with one of the first time homeowners programs or different loans for as little as a 620 credit score. So if you find the right lender, you can probably slide by under 620. Of course, it's going to cost you, but the credit score requirement is a bit more flexible and not as high when you're trying to buy a home than renting. All right. So now we're going to talk about buying. All right. But before we talk about buying, I want to take my, little 30 seconds to plug myself. Okay. Now, in case you missed it, my name's LaToya.Cooper. I'm a realtor. First-time homeowners are my heart. Okay. So if you're here in the triangle, and you're trying to figure it out, I know buying a home can feel really overwhelming. Sometimes it's hard to know where to start, but it doesn't have to be. I have a background in marketing and a heart for helping people, especially if it's your first time buying a home. And so I'll guide you step by step and answer those questions, and just make sure that you have the resources to feel confident in your journey. All right, because finding the right home is not just about getting the keys, but you're really starting a new chapter in life. Okay, so super important. So if you're ready to turn your dreams into a reality, give me a call. All right, I can be reached at 984-960-9514. All right, let's talk soon. All right, so let's go ahead into the second part, which we're going to talk about buying now. Benefits of buying. All right. Now, one of the most obvious benefits of buying is that you get to build equity over time. So when you're making your mortgage payments, they actually contribute to your ownership of the property. All right. It's not just you making payments to help someone else pay their mortgage, but you're paying your mortgage. It's going towards you owning it, and you're building equity that you can pull out later if you need to. All right. Now, another benefit is that you have the potential for the property value to increase. Okay, so which is great because, hey, that's money you can pull out. Not to mention, it's a great way to build wealth. You can purchase the home, and when you get to a point, let's just say, hey, your budget is bigger now, so you can buy a bigger home. Your family's growing. It's time for you to get a bigger home. You can sell that house for a lot more than what you bought it for and make money from it. Okay? And that money can go into helping you get your next home. Okay? Or you can just keep it for a rental property if you like. So that's definitely a big financial consideration. And another benefit, you can have fixed monthly payments. Your mortgage payments, depending on the type of mortgage that you have. If you have a fixed rate mortgage, your rate stays the same, so you don't have to worry about those rent increases, because they can be a lot sometimes. Trust, I know about those rent increases. And then another benefit, of course, tax benefits. You can get possible deductions, for your mortgage interest and property taxes and things like that. Now, the lifestyle considerations when it comes to buying, you do have the freedom to personalize your home and to renovate it as you see fit. Because when you're renting, and if you're, sometimes you can do renovations and do special things and customize with the landlord's permission. But what is the purpose? Then when you leave, you've invested that money into making that place great for you, which is fine. But you don't want to invest so much in knowing that you eventually are going to have to walk away, because you can't take fresh paint with you. So you build in a nice bookshelf. You can't take it with you. So that increases the value of the property for the landlord, and it makes the place comfortable or nice for you while you're there. But once you're there, you have to kind of let it go. But when you're, when you're buying, you have, endless possibilities you can put into your home as you see fit, knowing that you're making it better, comfortable for you, but also you're increasing the value in some cases. All right. There's the long-term stability and sense of community, because you don't have to worry about someone selling your home, or your home having to leave your home for, let's say, renovations or something for a period of time. Someone, if you're in let's say, an apartment complex and they're doing major renovations, you don't have to worry about leaving. You have more long-term stability. And also a sense of community. You're in a place, you have other homeowners who are probably going to be there just as long as you. So, there's just a sense of community, in situations like that, and just being able to actually learn the people around you and spend time with them and getting to know who they are. And of course, there's a pride in ownership. My mom had she was so proud of that moment, and it truly can create generational wealth. So that's definitely an upside. Now, buying, even though it's the American dream, right? There are also some downsides to it. Number one, there are higher upfront costs. So when it comes to like your down payment and your closing costs, those can add up. So it's definitely something that you want to consider. Now, there are first-time homebuyer programs, and even depending on the loan, like if you have like a VA loan, you may be able to get help with some of those costs. And in some cases, you may not have to pay some of those at all. You may not have to pay any down payment. So just something to keep in mind. But in general, and even like your closing costs, sometimes those can be upwards of $10,000. So just keep that in mind. There's the responsibility for all the maintenance when you own the home. So things break, things stop working, you can't call anyone. You have to take care of those things yourself, which can be a lot. It can be stressful. It can be financially burdensome. It can just be something that's not fun, especially when it comes to unexpected things. But this is why one of the biggest things that I tell people when they are ready to start their home buying journey is to learn to become a saver, because you have to be able to save if you want to own a home, and there's no way around it. Whether you're saving for your down payment or you're saving for your, you're saving an emergency fund for repairs, but you need to be able to save so that you'll have a fund available if things do start to break. Because there's some things that can't wait. A piece of your siding falls off your home. You can wait a little bit on that, but if your pipes burst, you can't wait, a month to save up for it. You have to be able to go ahead and take care of that, and it could be a lot. Your hot water heater goes out. Your fridge stops working. So be a saver. That's a good first step. I don't care if it's $20 a paycheck. Learn how to get into the habit of saving and build you an emergency fund. All right. Now, another drawback to buying is less flexibility to move quickly. Okay, so if you need to move quickly, it's not as simple as wait until your lease ends or breaking a lease. There's a process. Selling a home is a process. We have to go in and determine the value. We have to see, what needs to be repaired first? What needs to be made pretty first? Got to make the house pretty. You're going to sell it, right? So, it's a process. You have to get pictures and get it, and do all the things. So not as much flexibility if you have to move quickly. So that's the thing. And then there is the market risk. We talked about one of the benefits being that your home can appreciate in value. But the truth is that it's a risk. It's a possibility that your home could appreciate, but it's also a possibility that your home value could go down. And that can be for many different reasons. It could be due to your lack of maintenance of the upkeep, but it also could be because of your neighbors and their lack of upkeep, because that, your neighbors and their homes, conditions of their homes in your neighborhood, they do affect your home value also. And also, it's just the market. Sometimes the market just fluctuates and it can be unpredictable. So that's one drawback, all right, the possibility of losing value. All right, so in order to kind of help you to sort through, I know all this information, there are some questions that I want you to kind of ask yourself. If you're still kind of trying to figure it out and, you're just kind of letting it all sink in, let me give you a few questions that you can ask yourself that will be helpful in making the decision of whether or not it's better for you to continue renting, or to go ahead and make that leap into home ownership. Now, for one, what are your short and long-term goals? Maybe write these down and, just go back later and think about each one, okay? You don't have to answer on a dime. But think about what are your short and long-term goals, because, we know that renting, may be great for a short term, but, long term, if you're already kind of settled into where you want to be, do you want to go ahead and buy, since you already, that you're already kind of where you want to be? Maybe you already have the career that you want and you just want to continue an upward trajectory where you are within that field. Okay, just think about your long and short term goals. Do you know if you're in the city you want to be in, or are you thinking about moving back home? Think about it. Question number 2, how stable is your income and employment? Okay, because you do want to make sure that if you're going to be making that leap into home ownership, you want to make sure that your income is stable, okay, and that your employment is secure. Next question, do you prioritize flexibility or stability? And because the answer now may not be the same answer in 20 years, but in this moment, are you kind of settled where you are and you just want the stability? Or are you one who likes to kind of bounce around and just see the world? So where are you at right now with it? Next question, are you ready to handle maintenance and repair responsibilities? Or in other words, are you good at saving? Have you begun saving? Okay, are you comfortable with saving? Or is it something that you still need to learn? And finally, does the idea of owning a home excite you, or does it feel overwhelming right now? If it feels overwhelming, it feels like too much right now, then maybe it's not for you right now, okay? Because it's something that you want to be excited about, all right? So just listen to how you feel. All right. So let's see here if I forgot anything. I don't think so. All right. The bottom line, there's no right or wrong choice. No right or wrong choice. All right. It's about finding what fits your life right now. All right. And if you're not sure where to start, reach out. I love helping first-time home buyers, and it's not always a quick journey. Sometimes it's a long journey, but having someone on your side, such as myself, who can make sure that you have all the information, but who can also be your accountability partner if you're trying to work towards it. But, let's say you have some things that you need to do first. Hey, you need somebody on your side who isn't going to be rushing you, but who's going to help you to be accountable, to take those steps so that you can meet your goals. All right. Well, thank you for hanging out with me today. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe to this podcast, and maybe if you have time, leave me a review, okay? It will help to grow the podcast so that it becomes more accessible to others, okay? And it'll pop up for more people to see. And I would love to hear what your experience has been with buying or renting, all right? So what are some pros and cons, in your opinion, that I may not have touched on? And make sure to come back next week every week for more tips and stories that will inspire you on your home buying journey. Thanks so much for listening. Happy home hunting.